Great. Perfect. We're recording, Liz, so no foul language.
Clean it up, man.
Clean it up. How's your summer been going so far?
So far, it's been incredibly lazy, so it's been nice.
Oh, good. It's the appropriate thing for a summer to be. Yeah, I was wondering, with the weather being what it is, how much turnout we get, you know? It's just, people are probably enjoying the outdoors.
I know, it's been gorgeous.
You know, a black and white copy of our thing we're going to be looking at.
Thank you.
What happened after we scheduled this is a grade book session got scheduled, and that took away some of the.
Oh, so that's right.
Because
Nobody wants to talk about this depressing topic anyways, you know?
Well, I don't know. Brightspade's grade book might be worse.
That is also a depressing
Having
topic.
taken the class and used the grade book.
Oh, I have water. I may have a snack.
How are you?
Good.
Good.
How are you?
Good. Yeah, doing good. We're plugging along, getting some training done, and just kind of, you know, I was so glad that I've never done one of these before, but it was so, you know, so glad. I was talking with Jackie yesterday about it, and, you know, just to spread the word about SRP, you know, was a great idea.
I'm coming to preview
Yes.
before having you in for
Oh, yes.
whole library
Okay.
personnel.
Well, hopefully I
so
passed the test.
we'll see. We'll see if you get the invite.
I'm gonna have my back probably towards you because I'm
That's
kinda
fine,
facing
yeah. I can watch you on Zoom.
That's right. In fact, we could probably, it's one after. Should I get started or? Yeah.
Is my microphone on, or can I mute it for while I eat?
It's not, well, then we mute all.
So I'll sit back.
You're okay.
So I don't crunch. This is the benefits of attending in person, everybody. The Cheetos. Well, try not to crunch. Tell me if I'm being too crunchy. If you can hear it, then I'll.
It wouldn't be a police training without food, right? Food and coffee. I didn't bring any donuts, but I'll have to do that the next time.
Well, my Army son once told me snacks are mission critical. That was the
Yes,
right
the snacks are definitely mission critical. Well, thank you everybody for joining us virtually and in person. We're so excited. University Police is excited to offer this presentation. Hopefully this isn't anything new to anybody because our PR campaign through the Campus Safety Committee has really been focused on trying to bring the standard response protocol to campus and understand, you know, what it involves and what the posters mean and what, you know, what the posters should really do for you, because it is that constant reminder. And so that's, you know, really the focus of today is to kind of help you by going through the poster and so you can explain it to other folks, you know, that you interact with. And everybody can hear me okay, right? Okay, great. All right. So let me give you a little background. SRP stands for, you're going to hear us refer to it as SRP, but it stands for the Standard Response Protocol. And as you can see at the bottom of our poster, which I'll put up, is there a share screen?
Oh, yes.
Or I can always do it
Yeah,
later
you can do
too.
it right there. Right at the bottom.
Show this one, okay.
Mhm.
And this one, right?
Mhm.
Double click.
Oh, well, yeah, that should work.
Did I do it?
Yeah.
Oh, Liz
except
says
we won't
yes.
see it.
Yes. Oh, you can see it.
They
The
can see
SRP
it,
poster. Okay.
but we have it.
We have a handout.
Perfect. So down at the bottom, you can learn a little bit. The very small print talks about who developed this program. And the people that developed this program were a national group of experts on mass shootings and public safety and campus safety and school safety. And it was all organized by an organization called the I Love You Guys Foundation. I'll go back on my face here as you, in that way, because I'll share. How do I go back on my face?
Yeah,
Or
choose to stop sharing and
stop
then,
sharing. Okay.
and then you can share it.
Stop share. Okay. Because we'll go back to the poster in a minute, but I wanted you to see a little bit about the I Love You Guys Foundation. You can Google them and check them out. The I Love You Guys Foundation was created, I think it's been around for several years now. It's something that Dr. Jackie, you're going to hear her name a lot today, had turned me on to and really introduced me to. it's a very sad story on how it started, but a very motivational, story in and of itself. The I Love You Guys Foundation was started by a couple, a husband and wife, that lost their daughter in a mass shooting. The reason why they call it the I Love You Guys Foundation is that was one of her last texts to her loved ones at the time of the event. Just a horrific thing for any person to go through. And they wanted to take that trauma and turn it into something positive. And so what they did is they created this foundation with the sole purpose of coming up with a protocol and steps and posters and visual aids and training modules, like many of you have probably already taken the training module, to ensure that people know, what do we do in these horrific times of possible, whether it be active shooter, or even it could be something like, we use the example of a wild animal outside can also trigger some of these things that are in the SRP poster. And by the way, feel free to stop me if you have questions, but I'll leave questions for the end as well. So this group organized this committee to create the standard response protocol. And it really is a K-12 program. It's traditionally been in the grade schools and middle schools and high schools. They're just getting into higher education. As you can see in 2021, well, if I had the poster up, in 2021, it's, I'll share it. Shouldn't go back, keep on going back and forth.
What you can do is drag, share that
Oh,
screen and then drag it over. So share screen 2 with,
Oh,
yeah, screen 2 and then drag it.
oh, this one? Okay.
Screen 2. No,
Oh, screen
to the
2.
right, yeah.
Drag it this way?
Just double click on that and then and click share. And then drag the image over to the other screen.
So that they can see me and also see the screen. Oh, perfect. As you can tell, this is my first rodeo with did I do it? Liz, you give me a thumbs up. Can you see the poster?
No, drag
No.
it right over
No.
to that screen. From there to there. It'll just
Yeah, no, I can see the other screen, I can see the Oswego home screen there.
Okay.
Yeah, if you just drag the image over to,
So like this. Oop.
yeah, just drag it to the right and it'll pop up there. There it
Oh,
is.
there we go. Okay. Oh, great. Oh, perfect. What I'm referring to is the HED at the bottom of the poster, which stands for the higher education version of the SRP. So prior to 2021, they never had a higher education version, and we are the very first SUNY campus, and I'm told the very first campus in New York State, private or public, to have SRP. To have the SRP program. So it's really becoming much more of not only a K-12 thing, but also higher education, and a higher education program. And again, the whole idea between, oops, oh, no, I lost it again, didn't I?
Just move it a little
Yeah.
further. Yeah.
There we go. Now, here, this I can drag up. Okay, there we go. The whole thing with SRP is really just it's a communication tool. It's an opportunity for individuals to understand if an emergency message goes out on campus. And the way we do that is if you're signed up for New York Alert, that's the best way. Hopefully everybody on the screen and everybody in the room is signed up for New York Alert. Any no's? No, everybody signed up. Okay, awesome. Because New York Alert is the program that we use to push out information in an emergency. We can text phones, call phones in an environment like this, like a classroom setting or a conference room setting. Usually there's a phone in the room. That phone will ring with a message. The screens can be taken over. The IT folks in their wonderful wisdom can take over screens using that program and some other programs that they have. We can obviously do the PA announcement throughout buildings that have a PA system, and of course the building, a couple of the buildings that have the public address system on the roof of their building. We've tested all this every year. We actually test the New York Alert every week during the school year. We have a small consortium of groups that get that test message. So it's always, a top of mind to make sure that it's working properly. With an emergency, we're going to advise you to do one of the following things. And if you took the online module, you will understand a little bit more about the following categories. So the categories are hold, secure, lockdown, or evacuate. And we'll talk a little bit about shelter in just a minute. That's a kind of a separate category, still has a lot of good meaning to it. So let's talk a little bit about hold. And I'm just going to go through this just briefly, just for those of you that may have questions about the actual categories themselves. So you get a text message from here on campus, and it says, hold in your room or area, and it might say, some reasoning behind it. But obviously, as the poster indicates, you're going to be clearing hallways, remain in your area until the all clear is announced. You can still do business as usual. It may be for a variety of different reasons that we want you to hold in a classroom. That could be for the simple reason of here in Penfield, we have a medical emergency that is going on in the the lobby area, and we just cannot have the people around, and it would be a lot easier for medical personnel to not have the people around as we're doing compressions on someone maybe that's had a cardiac event. So those kind of things. Business as usual. We're advising you that there's no threat that someone's going to come in your room. That's not the reason behind a hold. A hold is a much more of a casual type of alerting you to clear the hallways. Please keep the hallways safe because we have something going on where we need to have the space in the building. As you can see, instructional staff can close and certainly lock the doors if possible, account for your students, visitors, and others, do business as usual. The next category is secure, and you can see the hands there kind of indicate a little bit more about getting inside and locking the doors, right? We can still conduct business as usual, but we want everyone inside buildings and inside rooms to secure themselves in a locked environment. Try to bring everyone indoors, lock your outside doors if possible. We're going to talk a little bit about that in just a minute. Increase your situational awareness. That's one of the goals of this whole program, is to, as we announce things that are going on campus, if something like this happens and there's an emergency announcement, it's also a trigger to alert your situational awareness, to increase your situational awareness to what's going on potentially in your environment. Account for your students as always, and of course, business as usual in this situation. We're not in a situation where we're, locking down, which we're going to get to in just a minute. It's a secure environment. It can be for, we've actually on SUNY campuses done secure situations for a lot of wild animal type things. I came from a campus in the Catskill Mountains, SUNY Delhi. If anybody knows SUNY Delhi, it's a great campus. And when I worked with University Police there, we did several times. We never called it a secure because the SRP wasn't created at that point, but that's what we did. We did a secure, get inside, secure your doors, because we had everything from bears down there that occasionally would come to the area to deer or sometimes rabid animals, animals that we think might be rabid, just a concern while we handle that with the animal control folks. And that was much more of a wooded environment, so we saw it a little bit more here. Certainly a possibility though still, and something that's should be very concerning. If you hear it, take it seriously. We will, again, with all of these, try to give you as much detail as possible. So when we say secure, we'll advise you as to what's going on as best we can. Secure, wild animal in the the Penfield quad. All right. And it's not me on payday, that's the wild animal, but no, it's a wild animal running through, could be a dog, something like that. It's also, one of those situations where we were monitoring it throughout the situation last year, but some of you may have heard down in the city, kind of around the area of Tully's, where Tully's is, and down a little bit closer to the hospital. There was a woman that was walking around with a shotgun, And we were monitoring this at University Police. We didn't impose any sort of restriction on campus because we're watching this real life. We had an officer at the edge of campus, right at the 5 points there, making sure, we were kind of helping and assisting if needed. But OPD was handling the situation, but it could have turned into something like a secure. It wasn't a threat necessarily in the campus, on the campus, but it was a threat where, hey, we want to make sure that people are staying indoors. We have an individual that is armed, that is, maybe a half mile away, but you never know. I mean, we want to make sure that individual doesn't pose a threat to campus. And if they did, we would probably increase it to a lockdown situation. But those are the examples that you might find with a secure. The big one that I think that everyone is thinking about, especially when you turn on the news, you tend to, think of this right away, is this idea of lockdown, right? Lockdown. Lockdown is the traditional locked, lights out of sight. It's something that for those of you, that know Dr. Jackie is extremely passionate about the idea of lockdown drills. And she has done, I was just talking to her the other day, it's well over 500 lockdown drills now that she's conducted in various schools and other business settings and campus situations. Obviously, here at our campus, that is an eventual program that we want to instill too, is to have actual drills, run by Dr. Jackie and her team when she's not busy saving the world from other things as she's doing now in Albany. But the lockdown, you're moving away from the sight lines, and we'll talk a little bit about the sight lines in just a minute. You're maintaining silence. It's that traditional out of sight type mentality. We are trying to secure the doors, whether that be locking the doors or using some of the techniques that I'm going to share with you in just a minute. Prepare to evade or defend too. You might remember, back in the day, the FBI had a run, hide, fight. That's what you always learned, run, hide, fight. It's still a great concept. I love the concept behind run, hide, fight. We've just advanced it a little bit. With a lockdown, you're in that hiding stage, but you also want to be able to think, okay, I could also, if the situation gets worse, I could also flee out a back door or fight the individual, and that's something that your situational awareness hopefully is increasing. Okay, this individual has now burst into my area. I got to make a choice. I got to either I'm going to flee with, my classmates here, or I'm going to throw things. Try to, attack the perpetrator. Those kind of things, just go through your mind, and it's a very scary thing. But we want to have people increase that situational awareness. And a lockdown might mean that you, try to evade or defend at some point. And so that's an important thing to always remember as well. Again, instructors, you're going to recover people from hallways, close and lock the doors if possible. We're working on that, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a minute. Turn off the lights, move away from sight, maintain your silence. Do not open the door. Even if you remember from the online training, even if someone is announcing that they are police, you still don't open the door. And that's an important point. The police, when we come and are clearing hallways and clearing rooms, we're going to have access to those doors. Okay. We have a program through University Police where obviously we have keys to all the doors here on campus. Every University Police officer has a key to, a door on campus. We obviously have card access. My card access on my keys. Anytime I see a card access point, it'll allow me in. We also have the ability to give those to other rescue personnel. So for example, if EMS is part of the rescue operation, they're going to be able to get in if they need to. And so we're trying to advise people, an aggressor may use, hey, it's the cops, let us in kind of thing, just to gain entry into a building and into a room. And so we want to ensure people that we want you to sit tight. We want you in a lockdown situation, lights out, locks on the doors, or barricade the doors as best as possible, and just stay out of sight. If the classroom does involve a window, obviously there's a lot of glass in especially some of the newer buildings on campus. We talk often about the wonderful Hewitt that we're going to have very soon. It's going to be a beautiful building, but as a public safety professional, sometimes we cringe at the amount of glass that's going to be in that building. It's not going to be very easy to hide in some parts of that building, but we want you to just think of doing it the best you can. And that's, if it means evading to locking down into a closeted area, if you can get out of sight, that's the most important part of this. Since we're on that, let me just share with you, one of the things that comes up often is that, there we go, I guess, can I just zoom out maybe a little bit, right? Yeah. Yeah, that still should be able to be seen quite well by, one of the things that we hear a lot, and it's a problem we are addressing. I work very closely with Mitch and Alan Bradbury and Vicki Furlong, our boss, of course, about access and the ability for faculty and staff to lock doors. We are actively trying to, increase that ability on campus. We are going to a card access system as much as we can. That's good for this kind of situation, because if we have an emergency, we can shut down access to doors that have the card access. So in other words, you try to get everybody from the hallway. If you hear a lockdown situation, try to account for everybody as you can. But we can shut down the card access so that those doors are essentially locked. If you have a classroom in Hewitt, and anytime in the next renovation, as the renovation gets revealed, you won't be able to get into a classroom without card access or the door being unlocked. We can lock it down in this situation right from our station with our card access system that we have. Some other options, because locking a door may not be always available to you. And we understand that. We're working very closely with Mitch and his team in Lanigan. The lecture halls in Lanigan are something that we're addressing. They were brought up in our study of this, and we understand that those doors pose a problem. We're looking at a few different options that facilities can implement in those doors and in those lecture hall areas. But here are a few photos, some of them staged, most of them staged. I'll show you one that isn't. But you can see the staged photo of a classroom in the upper left-hand corner where individuals brought two tables, one table upright, and then the other table wedged against it, with students sitting to block as much as they can that doorway. Obviously, that's a staged one because people are smiling in that photo. The one just below that, where students are throwing book cabinets and chairs and desks as much as they can against the door. That is another example, a very rudimentary example, but something as you can see the young lady to the right is doing. I leave the last photo for the end because that top right photo is out of the Ohio State University. And that photo was actually taken during a lockdown event, an actual lockdown event. All those individuals are safe. They survived the situation, but that photo was taken by an individual inside the room during a lockdown event. As you could see, those students in that particular classroom were unable to secure the door in any other way. So what they thought of, okay, we're going to bring as much material as we can to that doorway to try to prevent any sort of access as best we can. And as you can see, the young man, and actually all three of the young people in that photo appear to be on their phones. And that's something that is typically going to happen, right? The Wi-Fi access might get a little bit of a pressure, but we are going to, certainly be communicating as best we can through the New York alert system as we go forward with that. So you can see that's an actual event from a college campus. Here's some other staged photos. This is just some other ways to use very available type items to secure doorways. These two teachers here, obviously this is more of a K-12 type setting, just given some of the things that you can see in the picture. But you can see these two staff members are looping this rope around the door and using their body weight to keep it closed. That's a technique that's certainly an option. If they're still hiding in the sense that they're around the corner from that, but able to to pull that door closed. Again, using your common sense if the situation comes to be. The individual in the top right corner is using a belt with some of the hinge door system that you see. Those doors are very common in our buildings. We also have some other tools that we are looking into, like there's a metal cone system that can go over those door frames, that hinge system to lock that door from being able to be pulled open or pushed open in that case as well. Here's a situation where you have two handles close together. Everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but there's probably somebody in the room that's wearing a belt. I'd be that person today. I am wearing a belt. So I would, if a belt is needed, be able to use that as best I can to try to secure, doorways. The photos down at the bottom here show some other, obviously staged, because it's not going to be very effective with the one in the top right, with the glass right there, but it's used as a example so you can see into the room, but you have the mock gunman there. And you have a situation where two individuals, based on the distance between the door and the wall, are able to secure that door pretty well. If the windows weren't there, it'd be effective to stop that door from being pushed open. Just anything we can do to try to slow down the perpetrator. Research, and Jackie's done a lot of it, have shown that in these situations, an individual is going to go towards the path of least resistance, right? If they can't gain access in the doorways, you actually see it in some of the, the videos that get released after mass shootings. Individuals try doors and they move on. That is, if we can get that to occur, we can keep the individual safe in that room. So we're really, trying to give you ideas. This idea with the chair has been done actually here at SUNY Oswego. We did try it and it works well. It takes a little bit of jockeying, but you can wedge the chair with the leg of the chair against the doorway and prevent that as a pull open door, of course, from the other side, and it prevents it from being pulled open. Certainly someone with a lot of strength and a lot of force could probably still rip that door open, but at least it stops it as best we can. And then of course you can see the table here. Most classrooms have electrical cords. I'd have a free-for-all here with the electrical cords that John has, and thank goodness, because he's all prepared. I would tear out as many electrical cords as I needed, get a table against the door, and I could use the electrical cords to try to make some sort of a brace, right? Some sort of a system to keep that door closed. And that can be an effective tool as well. This last little diagram here shows a little bit about the concept of the fatal funnel. The fatal funnel is something that we talk a lot about in policing when we do firearms training, but it's also a concept that you can learn about a little bit in a classroom setting. Every classroom that we're in, including here, we have a fatal funnel, right? We are in the fatal funnel with that door. So
My back's to the
and your
door.
back's to the door. However, hidden behind that TV or under the table, we would be hidden from anyone looking into this glass door, which is probably not the greatest security, obviously, but looks beautiful. An individual may not shoot through that door if they see, okay, well, nobody's there. I'm not going to waste my time and waste my bullets trying to get through this door. Because they might not, they might, unless they're really hankering for some tea, may not know that those individuals are in that hidden space within the fatal funnel. And then the last photo here actually is from another training where they did the attacker type situation where an individual, what do you do if all else fails? You have tried to hide, you've tried to lock down That didn't work. There's no place to evade. Your last option is to fight. And you can see the photo here does show a group of students doing this role play where they attacked a perpetrator that was trying to do harm. So, when it comes to lockdown, that's kind of, some of the alternatives that we can think of. I'll talk just briefly about evacuate and then get to shelter just at the tail end. Evacuate is a situation where you might be told to leave a building for another location. And I'll increase this again, just so you can see the fine print. Evacuate, we might advise individuals to evacuate to a certain location because of a certain type of a threat. Leave your stuff behind. If possible, do bring your phone, because that's a good means of communication with New York Alert. Follow instructions. Obviously, you're going to try to evacuate to the specified location that we tell you during, through the New York Alert system. Account for your students and notify any missing or injured people. And evacuate, could be in a lot of, different circumstances. It could be, something simple as maybe some sort of a, obviously it'd be more of a fire alarm situation in this case, but if Shinneman had some sort of a gas or chemical release, and we need individuals to evacuate Shinneman to the campus center, we might advise individuals evacuate Shinneman Hall to the campus center or to the circle in front of the campus center. Those messages might be conveyed. It might also be conveyed through the fire alarm system in conjunction with a New York Alert message being pushed out. And then lastly, before I get to questions, the idea of shelter, these typically happen in more natural type disasters. So if you have that tornado, flood, it could be also a hazmat situation. Hopefully not too many tsunamis here in Oswego, but you never know. That lake, I look at it sometimes and I see the waves coming in and I think we're in for it, but I still have yet to see any sort of tsunami action. But the shelter is going to be advising you of some sort of a hazard. The one I can think of that I think would be, most common here at Oswego, obviously the weather events would be one, but flooding. We tend to get flooding occasionally in a lakefront environment. And so that the shelter to a higher ground might be conveyed. Even at Mary Walker and some of the areas around Mary Walker, we've had some water issues there before in the past. That might be a message we push out to the campus community to advise individuals, stay away from north side of campus, please move to higher ground. And that could even include assembling at Laker, right? Probably our highest ground that we have. If maybe not Laker because you'd have to cross 104, but at least like the campus center or Shinneman or Sheldon Hall, something a little bit higher ground in that regard. So hopefully this was kind of a crash course in the SRP poster. Hopefully you've been seeing these around campus. The facilities team has really done a great job of hanging them around campus as best they can. Mitch's team has kind of taken that task on. If you see a location where you think a poster should be, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be glad to either personally come over, and you probably don't want me hanging it up because I'd probably use, just masking tape. So I'll leave it to the facilities folks to adhere it properly. The way we hang posters is if there's a doorway that's kind of in the area, we tend to hang it on the side away from the hinges. So in this environment, if we wanted one in this room per se, we would hang it away from the hinges so that when you open the door, you wouldn't be blocking the poster. You could still see the poster, right at the doorway away from the hinges. Facilities has been doing a great job of putting the posters up in some really good locations in hallways too. I noticed in the campus center, I think they did a tremendous job in the campus center. I've walked in and saw where they hung some of the hallway posters. They're a little bit bigger than the classroom posters. But I think they have pretty good visibility. And Mitch's team, I thank them for doing all that hard work hanging those posters. And again, if you see a location where you think, hey, I'd like to have an SRP poster here, whether that be a classroom or a hallway. We're really not doing individual offices, right now, but certainly if you feel that that's a need, a conference room, we'd be glad to address that. And I'll open it up to any comments or questions. There's no silly questions, so feel free to say anything you wish. We're here to kind of all chat about it.
I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, so this is oddly specific, and this is the classic case of worrying too much about something that's incredibly unlikely. So, so being from economics and loving a good black swan event, so to speak. So I was really noticing when I first took, the test in the learning management system, the training, like just do not open the door. So you've got a lockdown alert. You're in the 4th floor Mahar, it's faculty offices, you shut the door and somebody, your student or colleague comes up and bangs on the door. I just feel like I'm probably going to open that door.
Right. Is that the question, Liz?
I guess it is. I mean, there's this question of what judgment. I mean, it's harder when you're in a classroom and there could be 30 students depending on you to not open a door, or something, or if it were just me. But I guess I always wonder, like, how do you decide? It's the same thing when we have a Mahar and there's a potential fire, right? Because for a wheelchair, you evacuate them to the stairwell, which have, fire protection and really just gives the emergency responders chance to get to them. And I'm like, well, then do you just leave? Do you stay? I mean, and I don't know. And it's like, a list of things I should be worried about. It's pretty far down there, but since I attended this, I thought I'd go ahead and give it an ask.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because if you asked me 10 years ago, I would have never said that, somebody's voice can be duplicated via, that's impossible for someone's voice to be duplicated via AI. But, you think about these things and how, times have changed. I think if I was in that situation, I think I would still, rely on, okay, that sounds like Tina, so I'm gonna let Tina in. It's a judgment call. It really is. I think you're right on, Liz, that judgment call has to be made. We ask people through this whole process, obviously, that the concept of situational awareness, means that it's never going to go exactly how it appears on the poster or on the training, right? There's always going to be some sort of a wrench thrown in the works. And that might be that that individual is banging on your door frantically, let me in. We're certainly, as a campus, not going to ignore those types of calls. But how do you do it, right? How do you make sure, maybe you talk with your colleagues. And I know that there's one office on campus, I won't call them out because they might not want to be embarrassed by this, but they've come to me and they actually have code words with their colleagues where it's an office that has a lot of students coming in for individual appointments. And they have a code word system within the office that indicates like, hey, I just need another body in the room, or this is something where I need this student removed, or I need university police called, or I just need someone else to hear this because this is maybe some sort of a conversation that is going a certain way where you need another witness in the room. If you have a small faculty like economics, and people in your hallway, maybe you guys come up with a code word. It kind of sounds silly, but if an emergency occurs,
it's going to be a Monty Python trivia quiz.
That's right. Maybe like Geronimo or something, whatever. But you're exactly right, Liz. It'd be a judgment call based on your situational awareness. Probably most of us are, if somebody's banging on the door and it was just after the lockdown was announced, I'm probably open in it as well. Probably knowing that, okay, chances are this is going to be an individual that needs to have protection as well. And so I'm going to welcome this person into my holding area and keep this person safe. Yeah, great question.
Sorry, did you have a question?
Yeah, with the design of Hewitt, as you'd mentioned, with lots of glass, and I'm thinking of that glass room in Shinneman, or there's a couple in Shinneman or Wilbur where it's completely glass, you see in the whole way. Are architects taking into consideration the fact that people may need to hide, that we're in a terrible time in our world when people need to hide from people who want to do us harm? Or, I mean, what do people do in that glass room? It's completely glass.
Right. And I do know that is part of the conversation. As far as why they're not, I mean, I understand why they're doing it is an aesthetic thing, to make the room look bright, open, I think that they're not doing not our campus per se, but I think architects in general are starting maybe more to seriously think about, if you have a room like that, you're going to have to include some sort of a closet space that can be utilized, some sort of a hiding space. And I've heard other people in the field talk about having like a lot of classroom spaces. They have the podium area, the desk area, where they have the computer monitor. There's a little bit of hiding back there, but only for maybe 3 or 4 or 5 people. Not as much to be able to to get hidden in that environment. That environment might mean that you're in this glass room space, your situational awareness kicks in. Okay, I know I have this situation going on. I'm going to try to get to another room. I'm going to try to get to, I know that, if you're in Shinneman, I know that there's some other rooms that are totally able to be secured a lot better. No windows, those where Liz has her meetings for faculty senate. That's a room that has a lot of doorways, but no windows, if I can remember correctly. So if you can get into that room, secure it as best you can in that, that area. Even I think, and correct me as people know better than I, but I think some of our gender neutral bathrooms are lockable, right? I believe. I think that was part of the goal, is to have them lockable.
The single stalls.
Stalls. If you can get 10 people into that room, you can also lock it. That would be a good environment. Certainly no windows. If you're in Shinneman, maybe knowing where those locations are. Hey, I know I can get my class of 12. It's going to be tight, but I can get everybody into that room. I know I can lock it because it's a single stall facility, and I can be able to secure myself there, as opposed to this classroom with all of these windows. It's certainly something I know that architects get asked a lot. I've been in meetings before where architects have been asked that question, and it's something I know they think about. But I think I agree with you in the sense that I don't think they are considering it over. I mean, the safety aspect as much as they should. And maybe that will be a development that comes, not being an architect, but, maybe there's a way to, it's so expensive, but we've talked about the clouded glass. They have these wonderful doors. A lot of times people use them in door settings where you can flip the switch and it turns the clear glass into a clouded glass, that is extremely expensive. So of course that's something that is usually reserved for, I've seen it in private universities before, but it's certainly a great point. It's something I think we need to do a lot better with, being a public safety person. I'm, the one hazard in this room is this door. I'd be glad if this was no windows, no, nothing, but we don't live in that
But it would seem to me with this door or a lot of rooms, it's a simple compromise, particularly to what's already been built or designed to be built. To just, I don't know, have some blinds, have some shades that can just be pulled down, like a light blocking shade. It seems like, in Shinneman or Wilbur, the ones that Sarah's speaking about, it seems like, there's fancy shades in 114 Murano. I mean, it seems like there could be shades that go down that really limit the visibility from that room.
Right.
That
a
could
great
be
point.
controlled to go down, and even, the ones, the newer office doors that have just, a rectangular window or a classroom with a rectangular window.
Yeah.
It seems that's a fairly easy problem to deal with.
And as you see on videos when they release them from some of these mass shooting events, you do see instances where an individual will shoot through glass to gain access. It just happened, I believe there was the Tennessee one, where the individual, shot through glass to gain access. But typically what we've found, at least through looking at those, is that they're only doing that to gain access when they know they want to gain access. So in this setting, if we can get out of sight as best we can, they might not, try to get through that glass because they know there's no, if their goal is to victimize, there's no victims in the room. At least we can, try to indicate that. I like the idea of my wife's a public school teacher, and I like the idea that some schools are coming up with these walls. I've actually been in a classroom that has them. It's very interesting. My one thought is that it's great because they are like a bulletproof type, structure. They're extremely expensive. They are easy to operate. One person can operate them. But it also, like if there's a glass, like say you have these glass rooms, and the way you secure is have these walls that can be pulled out that are, bullet resistant. The problem is that, okay, the shooter sees the wall pulled out. Hey, I got victims in there. I'm gonna, really, I know that I can, get into that room and maybe try to, get through that barrier. I might, take the chance of trying to gain access for the purpose of trying to target. I see the walls pulled back. That's an indication that people are in there. So it does have, it's kind of a double-sided type, situation. But certainly a great idea, to do whatever we can to try to secure individuals behind protective walls, protective barriers. Anything else? I know there's tons of different scenarios. I do want to again thank Jackie for all her work on this. It's been about 1.5 years process to bring SRP to campus, and Jackie was the one that spearheaded this and really introduced me to the concept and introduced me to the program. I'm really hoping to get out to the I Love You Guys Foundation and do some training with them. Jackie right now is the only certified trainer in SRP, the official certified trainer. She's trained us to do some training, but I'd really like to get out there and see if there's other things that can be developed. The great thing about SRP, by the way, this will be my last little plug for them. Every single thing they do through the foundation is totally free. They don't charge you for anything. You can use their logos, you can use their posters. As you can see with this poster, we slap the SUNY Oswego logo on it, and they're happy. There's no what's the term for
Copyright?
Yeah, there's no
Copyrighted
copyright.
materials,
There's
yeah.
no, I mean, you might see a copyright down at the bottom, but they don't have a concern about, you can as long as you're keeping they want you to keep the poster through the way that they have it set up, because that's the way that the statistics, the research has shown is effective. But everything is free. Through this SRP program, other than the printing costs on ourselves to make the posters, we didn't have to pay anything to the I Love You Guys Foundation. It's entirely free. It's really just a wonderful group, really trying to make a difference, trying to do the right thing to keep people safe.
Very nice. Thank you very much. This is great. I
Thanks,
really
Jill.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Really appreciate it. Take care.
All right. Thank you,
Enjoy the
guys.
weather.
Bye.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. That's great.
Hopefully that
Yeah.
answered some. Hopefully I didn't mess up your computer.
Oh, no. I think it's fine.
Yeah, great.
Great, well, thank you.
I didn't even have everybody sign in, but you're the only.
Oh, do I need to
Did you
sign
have a
in on the
sign
sheet?
Or
No, I actually was keeping
could-
track.
okay.
I didn't love Farah. That was someone.
was
who
that
just-
Casey?
Is it?
Is it, did you recognize there was a woman on the screen, Casey?
Oh, no, her was,
Um,
she's Para.
Okay.
I got that, but that name I didn't recognize, but I'll see if.
Is there a, I don't, is there like a record? Well, with the recording, actually. we can-
Yeah,
We can
yeah.
probably be able to see who was on.
unless it's someone else's account or something,
Okay.
you know.
Mhm.
Because, and sometimes people will be iPhone or Human Resources 3. or-
Okay,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
right.
Those are kind of hard to identify, but.
Well, yeah.
Sarah's
any-
iPhone, I'm sometimes
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Any group that wants to do, we'll gladly do a
Well, thank you.
library thing, here shortly.
Yeah.
And
This was really good. I'm gonna stop the recording.
yeah, sure.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks. Hopefully it was interesting.
Yeah, oh, that was
Never
very
a
good.
good topic, but,
Right.
and thank you, John, for all
Oh, well,
your
thank you.
tech support.
Take care, Tom.
Thank you.
Take care.
And if you like some tea, you're
Oh,
welcome.
thank you so much. No, I'll stick with the caffeine. Caffeine.